Welcome back to the Integration Hub. Now let's dive right into it because we have one of my favorite people in the industry with us today, and that's Bart DeMunck. He spent over 3.5 decades in supply chain, with 8 of those years being at Gartner itself, where he spent time advising some of the largest organizations in the world on how to move their supply chains and how to invest in technology. And earlier this year, I got a chance to actually sit down with him and ask a few questions in those areas as well. We talked about, of course, why data is so siloed and how that's becoming a real AI bottleneck, why the whole operations versus IT divide is still happening today, and why Bart believes the most dangerous thing a company can do right now is say, well, not now. He also talks about a recent launch of a new philosophy that's called Now, capital N-O-W. We'll get into why. And I think by the end of this, you'll understand where the energy is coming from. Let's get into it. All right, the chain, right? So looking at supply chain and these individual parts and pieces, how does that play into technology and how we're all participating in the scheme of, I don't even want to say one company supply chain, but as a whole?
Yeah. So I'm going to go a little bit back in history, right? Because when I went to college, there was no term supply chain. You couldn't study supply chains at that point in time. So supply chain was something that really came up in the 90s. We were talking about logistics previously, now chain. But if you look at what a chain really is, think of a bicycle chain. Yeah. It is a perfect connection of individual links. Yeah. And we know in a typical chain, if one of those links breaks or is not connected, you have no more movement of the wheel and you come to an absolute immediate stop. The problem is I've now been in this industry for 3.5 decades, is I've never seen a company where supply chain is a perfectly connected link. Yeah. The problem with supply chains today is that everything is still so siloed. We use multiple processes, we have the data siloed, and a lot of the applications, the old style applications or application stacks as we call it, these vertical stacks, they're siloed by function within the supply chain. Yeah. Nowadays, when we look at technology, we used to fit them in those buckets, right? Sure. And according to Gartner, as you know, I spent 8 years with Gartner, we used to look at that to say, well, you're looking for a TMS. What does that TMS bucket look like from a vertical perspective? Yeah. Now people are looking at it more and more from an end-to-end perspective and from a platform perspective. Because we used to be application rich in our organizations and we were data poor, we didn't have networks. Sure, yeah. But technology has changed, and you guys know that because you do connectivity. Yes. Is that now we have almost too much data, we're networked, so it makes the capabilities maybe a little bit less important, but saying, how do I connect with those capabilities, with these cloud-based platforms we now have, with APIs and EDI, how do we tie all those connections together? Yeah. So if you look at it from that perspective, it's no longer like a chain in a traditional way of these are all these individual links, but look at it more like in a car where you have a belt. Yeah. A belt is one piece. Interesting way. And it connects it, rather than a chain, which is still kind of the same thing, but it's connected different things that if they break are different. Yeah. So I think there needs to be a different approach from the customer base on how to think about technology and how to go and look at vendors, not just purely from an application capabilities perspective, but what do they bring from a network and a data perspective? And then how do I apply that across my organization to really bring value?
Now that reframe from a chain of individual links to a full connected belt shapes everything that follows in this conversation. Because once you see supply chain that way, the question isn't which application to buy, it's how do you connect to what you already have? And for Bart, that question starts with your data.
Well, it's interesting. Do you feel like it's still, I hear that a lot, right? That everything's siloed off, right? It sounds like, do you feel like those silos are breaking down and now it's us focusing kind of on the flow of all that data and how it's being registered at kind of these points?
We should do a lot more effort on breaking the silos down, but we see it, everyone's talking at the show about AI, right? But reality of AI is, the lifeblood of AI is data.
Yeah.
When you go to an organization, they don't go, here's all my data. They go, we have a pocket of data here and a pocket of data there. And so unfortunately, with a lot of AI vendors, they have to go to a customer and say, well, for 6 months, what we're going to do is build a data lake, looking at all your pieces of data, and then we look for use case to use AI on.
Yeah.
That's not how anyone wants to work.
No.
So to be successful with AI, companies need to get more data ownership.
Totally.
So, but a lot of companies don't have a chief data officer. Maybe the largest companies, they don't have data governance.
Yeah.
But it's a requirement to do that work up front before you start looking at it end to end,
Yeah.
or before you even apply AI.
Yeah.
So it's something that companies need to think about as a foundation, a ground layer, before they then start building an application on tech stack, even with AI on top of it, is how do I connect that data? And there's a lot more opportunities to do that nowadays with the technology we have available.
Then, if data, of course, is the foundation, then people are the structure built on top of it. And Bart has a very specific take on why the traditional division that we see between operations and technology teams is one of the biggest in the industry, especially for change management failures.
Well, it makes me really like wonder. You talk about the roles, the data roles, in a lot of these companies, and we work with a lot of like mid-market carriers, brokers, 3PLs as well. Do you see that? Do you think it will start being a norm that there's key players in those seats instead of this like, I mean, sometimes I've seen even like interns are kind of like running the Tableau situation. Do you think that we're going to see that transition from like this intense human capital on the floor, slanging freight on an average day, to this more like a technical roles leading those industries?
Not necessarily technical. That's kind of the old way, right? Anything you would do from a technology perspective on the carrier or broker side, you go from operation, you defer to the IT department and the CIO. But when you really want to go end to end and you want to apply things like AI, the technology needs to be ingrained in the operations. You need to involve operations. So we're no longer seeing, on the one side, we have the operations people, and then we have the technology people. It's operational people enabled by technology. So the two need to go hand in hand. And to be successful at that, people need to approach it differently, which means we got to educate our employees about these things like data. What is AI? Because there's a lot of resistance because people don't understand it. And not make it so much as a technology thing, but more as a value creation or empowering thing that they can use. Because when you do that and you do that effectively, it takes some of that resistance away. Same like in the 90s when we started putting in applications, people were doing things manually. They said, oh, you bring in routing solutions? Yeah, but we do it manually today. It can never replace what is in my mind, my institutional knowledge. But once you got them convinced and you worked with them and brought them on part of the team that was doing the implementation, then they saw the impacts of that. And to be honest, we're now 35 years further. We still have the same human, kind of, I would say, reactions to technology of it's a change. So again, the focus of it, although you're trying to put in new technologies, it's people. People is going to be your core power. And how do you look at it as an enablement of your people rather than people versus technology, operations versus the IT department?
That technology resistance that Bart describes from the 90s is still the same resistance playing out today with AI, just with different tools. And we asked him what leadership actually needs to do differently this time around to make it all work.
Yeah, that human knowledge needs to be there. What's interesting though is like a lot of times I feel like the marketing from AI, you hear this, it allows the individuals to do higher level roles. So exactly what you're talking about. And something that came up the other day with Eric, we're talking to Eric Johnson here about the same thing, is do you think that, would you tell employees to probably be a part of those conversations? Do you think that the one for one will be there? Because I think that's sometimes what's confusing is like, sometimes people pitch it as, no, now all of your employees will be able to do like this higher level thing, but theoretically, right? That's not every person. So for employees out there that are working for these companies, sure, how should they go and take ownership in their roles to help be a part of that so that they're there of the future of their companies too?
It's really the role of the leadership to create what I call this culture of innovation, which doesn't just mean that they set out a clear strategy and they help then enforce that onto their organization. And part of that should be training, which we, to be honest, have done miserable jobs of the last few years. That's why we see people change jobs all the time, because people don't get trained, they don't get empowered, they don't get upskilled. They have to go and change jobs to get that additional training. But it's also given the ability of the people themselves to speak up and to say, especially with younger generations coming in, why couldn't we do this different?
Yes.
Right? Because an old person, when he says you got to use AI, that's like, why would we need technology? Because we've been doing it like this for 30 years. You bring a young person in that conversation, they said, why are we still using Excel and Access databases when we can do it in a more automated way? So it's like that glass half full, half empty. Well, you need to bring those people into that conversation to empower them, because it goes from both ways, leadership down and education, but also bottoms up to get the ideas of where do we truly provide the value with some of that technology, and also look at it from a perspective of we're going to use that technology as an enabler for talent, retention, and attraction. Because it's like going forward, what's going to be two very scarce things in this world? It's going to be clean water, but from a supply chain perspective, it's going to be people, right? So we know that the population continues to age. And so for you to be able, like in 5 years, to have the right people to run your business, even at the volume of today, because people leave the industry, they retire, they go to another job. Most of those roles don't get backfilled. And so you're going to need to have technology, one, to be more automated, to do more with less people. You're not letting go of people. They just go out anyway.
Exactly.
And we don't have enough people in the backfill to backfill those roles anyway, right? The same with manufacturing, same with warehousing. Why do we use robots in the warehouses? Not because we want to replace the people, because we have a gap where we don't have enough people. So we're automating that. But in the office, it's different, because we're enabling, we're empowering people. So I started in the 90s, as I mentioned earlier. So when we're doing things manually, like I started in audit, financial audit, we would go manually through thousands of these printouts to do these checks. And then all of a sudden we all had computers, right? And so now we got the data on the disk. Does anyone remember what a disk is? Floppy disk, or the 3.5-inch disk? And we put it in Excel. We run a macro on it. And what used to take us days now is done in minutes. So you have to look at what is the next phase of that. What we now do maybe in minutes in Excel, AI can do in seconds. So, and because, especially in logistics, we're dealing with billions of these shipments, which are hundreds of billions of message transactions. They might be very simple things, but we do them over and over and over and over. And that's where the opportunity lies, to really understand what are some of the things that can right now be easily replaced, get immediate value. And that's where we then start appreciating our people, because we're having them do the valuable things and create institutional knowledge that they can apply, rather than saying, well, I did 8 hours of emails today and I really haven't gotten to the important part.
From why to how, we shifted into a practical question that every logistics company is sitting on right now. Where do I actually start with AI? And how do I build momentum when most of the industry is just figuring it out?
When you're talking with everyone, where do you see, I don't want to say quick wins with looking at applying AI to different jobs, but where do you see AI being the most successful right now? And to the human element aspect of it, what training techniques are making that successful as well?
Yeah, I would say it's quite different industry by industry. And if you look at carriers and brokers versus shippers, it's quite different, because on the carrier broker side, we still have a lot of manual tasks, a lot of people doing those tasks. So in that perspective is automating that, whether it's through voice AI agents or it's automation of workflows. Shippers is a little bit different, because they're looking at it from a value creation point of view rather than cost efficiency point of view or, people point of view. But the approach should be, from an AI perspective, let's work with that customer on a very easy use case that makes sense, that can get very quickly to that. So, but if you're going to fail fast. But get something, create the success around it, implement it in a short amount of time. And that's where you want to make sure your partner is able to provide to you. And then leadership communicates that success throughout the company, because then the perception around AI changes. And when people become a lot more susceptible to willing to use the AI, now you're on a growth path. because the implementation timeline isn't depending on what the technology can do.
Yeah.
It's the way that people are willing to absorb it. So again, bring those walls down. Now you can build up. So start small, have that approach, do something that makes sense. I've been on some conversations with some of my clients where we talk to large manufacturers, and sometimes we ask, what would be a really useful use case? A lot of companies haven't even thought of that. They say, we've been looking at AI for a year. They've looked at the technology. They maybe looked at the strategy, but they haven't thought of what use case are we going to use it on.
Yeah.
But look at these vendors as partners that can help you figure that out. They can say, here's 4 easy use cases. Do those fits? Yeah, great. If not, let's discuss it and then find a quick win. There's companies now that within 48 hours, they can provide a demo because that's how fast the technology can work. And it's helping the company to get over that idea of it's unknown. I can show it, I can visualize it to it. I can have buy-in from you. Now let's go and do it, implement it. And then from there, use that as a base to build on from there.
I totally agree with the partnership thing. I think there's maybe, again, it depends on the vertical, but generally I think this industry is starting to understand that more from the technology side, right? This like more long-term conversations. Being at Gartner forever, talking with so many different teams, what is like a red flag for you when trying to figure out if this is going to be a long-term partner? Is it a founder situation? Is it how they implement? What are things for you where you're like, you know what, this is a good sign, or maybe this is a bad sign?
Yeah, I'd say what would be a bad sign if a vendor comes to you and says, I need $1 million, but I don't have a use case.
Sure, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Happens a lot,
Yeah.
right? That should be a red flag. That's not how you want to go. Why? No, really nothing to do with the vendor.
Yeah.
That's not you as an organization. That's not going to lead to success.
Totally, 100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Because then it's like, oh, it's going to take 6 months just to get all the data together.
Yeah.
Then you still have to figure out the use case for it. By the time you're there, the momentum's already gone. People say it took too long. And even when it's successful, that success is perceived differently. And again, that creates a roadblock to further rollout of AI. So the speed element is incredibly important. Why? Because we need to get going. So get going fast. So look for those partners that can really enable you. And again, it doesn't have to be limited to one partner.
Yeah.
AI isn't a technology on its own. It's an enabler that allows you to do many different types of things. So it could be that you're using many AI vendors in different parts of your business.
Knowing what to avoid is just one half of the equation. The other half is knowing what a good partner actually looks like. And Bart has a very clear point of view on that, shaped by decades of watching these relationships either succeed or monumentally fail.
Maybe on the opposite side of that, which I think in that point you make too, it's like, before even finding a good partner, are you a good partner, right? Like, do you have that use case? Are you ready to be prepared for that? Are there any like more positive signs from the actual vendor itself?
Yeah.
Whether it's like their team or culture where you're like, that's...
Yeah, I would say a lot of the people that I see, there's a little bit of a division of people that come from the tech side that see AI as an opportunity, or it's people that come from within the industry and they are creating these companies because they live the pain points and now they're approaching it to solve the pain points. And again, we always say transportation isn't rocket science. It's not that complex, although there is a lot of complexity, but it has a lot of nuances, has a special culture. And so I think people that purely come at it from the technology perspective don't always understand the politics going on in an organization,
100%.
or when you have a pain point, how sometimes hard it is to change the behavior, right? We all know, for example, that drivers sometimes have bad driving behavior. Just putting in telematics is not going to change that. Very short term, long term, it doesn't change unless you provide training to go with it. And maybe there's a reward to go with it. So you have to approach it differently. And so it's the same with these partners, these vendors. They need to understand that sensitivity as well. And when they've lived that, they have a much better and stronger approach to how to go and solve that. So it's not you versus me. You're just a supplier of that. It's almost like you become embedded as part of that company. And again, the bigger the change, the bigger the next evolution step, which AI really is. You need that trust and credibility from a partner. And how do you build that? I see that in my role as well, because I've been on the operations side. I've been on it from the 3PL and logistics carrier side. I've been on the shipper side. it creates familiarity, and people say, well, you understand our problem, right? So it's truly a partnership rather than what technology used to be 30 years ago. You bought it as a product, almost like you're probably too young to remember when you had a Windows and you had to go to a Walmart and it was a disk you bought and you put it in your computer.
Yeah.
So
AOL used to send those in the mail, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So that approach has changed. So I think look for those companies that approach it from that way, and that you feel really fit with your culture as well, because you want it to be, AI is going to be a year-long process, right? From where we are today, where it's really implemented by 0.000 something percent to being using it. Like there's research out there, World Economic Forum, Gartner will say 70% of XYZ tasks will be automated by AI. Maybe by 2030, I think not.
Yeah.
Everything we say when we think we're going to be so far ahead in 5 years. When I look back, when I was at Gartner, we do these predictions, they happen, but most of the time they take a lot longer. Not because of technology readiness, because our people, we're our biggest roadblock.
Totally.
You remember watching in the 80s, Back to the Future,
Yes. Yeah.
right? And they looked forward to the year, I forgot what it was, 2005.
Yes. Yeah.
And everyone was driving flying cars.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, have you?
No, I don't think we're close.
So I sometimes think we have that expectation of how fast we can change versus how slow we change. So that whole approach is just fundamental in picking that partner that you go like, that's really a good fit for what we're trying to achieve.
Definitely. Let's end it with a hot take. We love a good hot take from you as well.
Yeah.
Looking into 2026 as a whole, whether it's market or tech, what is something that you are very bullish on going into this year?
So I'm coming out and we'll see it soon. I have a new philosophy on supply chain.
Yeah.
I'm going to call it the Now philosophy. Now is an acronym. But to be honest, I'm sick and tired for the last 5 years where people, when you talk about them changing or adopting a certain technology, they don't say no. They say not now. So what I'm saying, it is now. It's not next year, it's not next quarter, it's now. If you don't start changing how you approach logistics and supply chain and how you use the data you have available, how you use technology, there's a big chance in 5 years you're not going to be around. Because your competitors are going to do it. There is even a chance that in 5 years, by doing it manually, you won't have enough people to do that work. You won't be able to recruit people because no one wants to do these things.
Yeah.
No person graduating from college is going to work on an AS400 system or in Excel.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm bullish about. That's why I'm coming out with this new philosophy on better supply chains, to really help drive. But part of it is the education, right? Yeah. So again, a big part of that is you need a different way of thinking from leadership, and then you need that culture of innovation to bring your people along. It cannot be inside of the organization a cultural shock where people say, I'm going from here to here. It's like jumping the Grand Canyon. We're in Vegas, the canyon is not that far. Yeah. You don't want to jump the Grand Canyon, right? You need to bring these people along. You need to train them. You need to empower them, and that's going to take time. So you got to start now to get to a point where you're going to be a lot more efficient and where you're going to have the productivity that we have, right? And again, as I said before, I can't force it enough. We're not going to have more people that are going to be working in 5 or 10 or 15 years. Yeah. That means that we have to do things differently. And by the way, our customers are continuously also asking us to do more, faster. So again, we have to think about that. How do we serve our customers better?
Serve them now.
And serve them now, right? Everything is now. You want to order something on Amazon?
Yeah.
When I started doing that in 1996, we knew that we ordered a book. It was going to take 3 weeks to get there. Now I was in Europe. Yeah. Now it's almost like I'm ordering it. I want to have it within 2 hours, right? Exactly. Not a good thing for transportation. It really suboptimizes the whole flow, but that's what we have to deal with. So create the agility, but it starts with the people.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is now. Networked intelligence, orchestrated agility, and wide-angle transparency. It's a framework, but it's also an argument that the window for not now is actually closing. And the companies who figure that out first won't just be more efficient, they'll actually be the ones who are still around to talk about it. Thank you again to Bart for this wonderful conversation. Thank you to all of you who've been watching all these wonderful episodes. We'll be back soon with some more and a really awesome retail season coming up. Until then, everyone, stay connected.
Still relying on legacy EDI? Manual work, costly van providers, and slow onboarding are holding you back. Orderful changes everything. Onboard trading partners 10 times faster, automate every transaction, solve production issues in seconds, and stay compliant across all your trading partners. Connect once, trade with the world. Go live in under 9 days with pre-built connections and real-time validation. With built-in support for leading ERPs and systems of record, Orderful fits seamlessly into your existing tech stack. Orderful is #1 in time to value for EDI. Orderful supports all core EDI documents across your supply chain, from order to cash, procure to pay, and logistics to warehousing, and with no hidden fees, ever. Whether you're upgrading your ERP, clearing a trading partner backlog, or done with the cost and complexity of legacy EDI, Orderful helps you move faster with zero surprises and complete control. The EDI infrastructure of the future, available today. Built for change, ready for growth.